Уважаемые гости, наша лекция начнется через 5 минут. Пожалуйста, все разберитесь с оборудованием для синхронного перевода. Через 5 минут мы начинаем лекцию.
Добрый день, уважаемые студенты, коллеги. Сегодня у нас не то, что необычная, достаточно интересная встреча. Можно будет потом еще чуть-чуть больше поговорить о Бобе Дорфе, но это не только профессор Колумбийского университета, известный или легендарный предприниматель. Вы знаете, ну кто постарше, не наши младшие курсы, студенты, мы в этом зале проводили лекции, два раза приезжал Стив Бланк, и мы здесь тоже слушали наше представление. Я уверен, что сегодня вот тот час, полтора часа, который мы проведем в этом зале, будет крайне полезно для всех вас, потому что именно общение, непосредственное общение с людьми, не через интернет, не через социальные сети, хотя они тоже важны, безусловно, но вот именно живое общение, безусловно, вашу компетенцию и капитализация, она, интеллектуальная капитализация, она возрастает. Вот, поэтому я уверен и надеюсь, что вы вот эту сегодняшнюю нашу лекцию или нашу встречу с Бобом Дорфом действительно и не только запомните, но я думаю, многие те советы и рекомендации, которые вы сегодня услышите, они будут крайне полезны для нас. И для вас, и для всего нашего университета. У нас еще просто коротенькое выступление Лоренса Райта будет. Я сейчас предоставлю ему тоже слово, поскольку он приехал с Бобом. Ну вот, а потом уже перейдем уже к содержательной части. Поэтому, Лоренс, прошу уже подняться на сцену. Можно отсюда, можно смотри.
Вот так. Ага. Спасибо большое. Огромная нам честь выступить сегодня. Спасибо за приглашение. Меня зовут Лоренс Райт. Я до последние 2 года веду программу, называется «Стартап Академия» в Москве. Это, может быть, одна из или самая ведущая программа подготовки стартаперов для своих долгий путь развития своего стартапа. И Боба Дорф преподает и проводит программу с нами. И мы поняли, что Боб слишком часто сидит в Москве, приезжает часто. Поэтому мы решили, надо все-таки показать ему другие города России. И, конечно, в первую очередь надо приехать в Санкт-Петербург. Ну, что мы понимаем, кто здесь занимается стартапом? Кто-нибудь? Уже много. А кто хотел бы, кто думает об этом? Okay, Bob, your audience these are all startups and wannabe startups. Это замечательно. И как Боб будет вам говорить, что заниматься стартапом высокой рискованной деятельности, да? Заниматься этим непросто. Это очень долгий, мучительный процесс. И ну, что мы можем сказать 100%, это если провалится, основные причины провала связаны с теми, которые мы можем обучить. Мы можем передать те ошибки, которые делают часто стартапы, это подготовки и реально тестирование бизнес-модели методом, который будет рассказывать Боба, и освоение навыки, skills, компетенции, которые нуждаются. Поэтому это новый подход, реальный, который работает. Мы это тестируем в течение последних 2 лет. 100 стартапов прошли нашу программу, из них 30% это растущие компании. Они за этот период времени подняли $5 миллионов пассивные стадии инвестиций. Они уже наняли больше 400 рабочих мест, создали. И оценочная стоимость этой компании свыше $50 миллионов. Это без госфинансирования, без бюджетных денег. Это все сделано нашими руками. Поэтому я хотел просто поделиться, что мы ушли из Сколково, создали новую компанию, это называется Launch Gurus. Посмотрите на наш Facebook, следите на новости наши. Мы запускаем целый ряд новых программ поддержки венчурного инвестирования, чтобы делать это более умный, более правильный подход, потому что стартаперы без денег никак. Вот. И целая экосистема вокруг этого. На основании выращивания умных денег, умных стартаперов. Вот. Теперь я передаю слово Боба Дорф. Это ведущий серийный предприниматель, который поделится своим богатый опыт. Давайте поприветствуем.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good afternoon. It's just a pleasure to be here with you. And I should tell you that in the 2 years I spent writing this book, I wrote it in a slightly different language, I assure you, since the 12 words I know in Russian, 11 of them are vodka brands and spasiba, and that's about the extent of my Russian ability. But as Steve and I spent literally 2 years figuring out the customer development methodology step by step, you are exactly the people we had in mind when we wrote the book. As you think about your invention, your idea, your startup, you will be, if you read this book or if you don't, you will always be encouraged to have in the front of your mind a customer archetype. Who is the person who will most benefit from the product I'm building? And after much discussion, Steve and I agreed that the customer archetype for our book was the 20 to 25-year-old engineer who understood how to build a great product, but generally speaking, didn't know too much more about what else makes a great business. And one of the most powerful and important points of customer development that is particularly hard for engineers to appreciate is that there is so much more to a successful business than a great product. Because at the end of the day, a great product without customers is a failed business, not a successful one. And so it's particularly a pleasure for me to talk to a group of some of the finest young engineers in Russia who apparently are responsible for some of the finest code written in the world, not just in Russia, and whose achievements in startups and software development are highly regarded throughout your nation and many others. And what I hope to do in the next hour or so is to introduce you in 1 hour to a body of knowledge that we teach for a week or 10 weeks or 3 weeks or 3 days. And so I hope you are listening carefully and trying to absorb as much of it as you can. There is much of our work, in addition to the book, has been translated into Russian. There are videos in Russian of Steve Blank talking about customer development. Many of his blog posts and things like that have been translated into Russian. So I guess we, and we're proud to say, customer development are here to stay in your wonderful country. The book has been a hit all over the world, and after the United States and China, Russia is number 3. We're now in a little over a year on our 4th printing, and I'm thrilled to say that not only many, now I guess more than 50 Startup Academy graduate teams have used this method to success, but so have literally hundreds of other Russian entrepreneurs taken and succeeded in using this new approach to building startups and hopefully to getting them right before you run out of money, which is sort of job number 1 for an entrepreneur. And what I'm going to show you today, I shared yesterday with over 2,000 people, entrepreneurs from all over the world, and at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress in Moscow. And I did it in a short version, and then I taught this master class yesterday afternoon. And so what I'm going to try to do really is first to explain some of the basics to you. It basically begins with a combination of agile marketing and agile software development, because you are constantly changing every element of your product, of your business, as you learn the opinions and gain the feedback from the only people whose opinions about your business matter. That's not me and Steve Blank. It's not your professors. It's not your rector. It's not your investors. It's not your co-founders. It's the only people who really matter are the people who will give you money for your product or service, your customers. You can use your customers to help you refine and evolve a successful, long-term, productive business. This is not fad technology. Steve Blank began working on customer development in 2000, year 2000, 14 years ago. Why did he do it? Well, for 2 reasons. First, when you retire from a startup that at a moment in time was worth $8 billion US, that's not 8 billion rubles. It's about, I guess this week, about 25 times that number, a little less than it was just a week or 2 ago. When you retire from your 8th startup that's reached a market cap of $8 billion, it's really hard to try to beat that with startup number 9. And so Steve said, I know what I'm going to do next. I'm going to change the way startups are built. I go back 20 years with Steve, and in fact, met him doing a bunch of work for his 8th startup, a data mining and intelligence company called Epiphany, where he used the old Silicon Valley trick on us. We need to do a lot of work with your startup, Bob, but we are a startup. We have no money. So would you mind if we pay you in stock? When Epiphany went public, a share that was bought for $1 was worth $385. So I was very happy looking back on the agreement to have worked for stock instead of for cash. And so since that time, Steve has literally devoted every waking hour, and that's quite a few hours because he basically doesn't sleep. He's like a goldfish, to building and testing and refining this methodology using the very same approach that he encourages every one of you to use in building and refining and strengthening your startups. So 13, and I'm new to this. I've only been working at it for 5 years. First 2 years writing the book and then teaching it all over the world, working with big companies and startups to actually deploy the method. Today, customer development is taught in 300 universities around the world. It's used by the United States National Science Foundation to train 400 scientists a year, along with their business partners in basically 400 startups, many of which, well over 100 of which, have gone on to external funding and to considerable success. And it's been used here in Moscow with more than 100 startups that have generated more than $5 million in investment capital, more than 500 jobs in the Startup Academy, now part of Launch Gurus and happening again in May, right down the road in Moscow. So what is this all about? When we get excited about startups, we forget that the sad truth is that if you are building a startup to scale, to get big, 98% of those startups are going to fail. Just every statistic points to how hard it is to build a truly successful, scalable startup. The bad news is they fail in a pile of blood and body parts and perspiration. And it's your blood and your body parts and your perspiration. And so if you're going to work that hard on your business, don't you want to do everything you can in the earliest days of that business to be sure that you're working on something great? There is no magic to startups. There's no guarantee that if you memorize this book and when you've finished memorizing 608 pages of text, you then eat the book and digest it thoroughly, and you do every single thing it says, there is still absolutely no guarantee that your startup will succeed. And if the easiest way I think of startups is they are one giant algorithm, usually about that long, and every element of that algorithm is a failure point for your startup. The price, the customer, the marketing, the distribution, the revenue model, the profitability, the manufacturing cost. The more of those failure points you can remove, the more likely it is that you will not be one of those 97 or 98% that wind up in the graveyard in a year or 2 or 3. Obviously, that's what you want to do. You want to find a startup that delivers 3 magical words. Repeatable. I can do this every day, again and again. If I make 10 sales calls, I come back with 2 orders. If I make another 10, I come back with another 2. Scalable. If I pitch 100 customers, I get 20% conversion. Then when I pitch 1,000, I get 20% conversion. And when I pitch 10,000, the conversion rate holds up as I scale the business. And then the third word, profitable. The three magic words, repeatable, scalable, and profitable. Not for a year or two, but for long enough to put your children and your grandchildren into college and university and beautiful homes and lots of success. And startups don't fail anymore for the lack of technology. You can buy a pound of technology from Amazon Web Services. You can rent software by the month from hundreds of SaaS companies. When I was building startups in the 90s, the investor pitch began with, well, we need $3 million for hardware and $3 million for licenses and $3 million for payroll and $3 million for advertising. Now you can at least begin most startups on a reasonable credit card limit without wasting time with investors, without piles and piles of money, and you can get started and see whether you pass the only test that matters. Are customers excited by my product? Because a company without customers is just not a company. Now you can do all of this and remove all of the failure points in your startup, and you can develop the most magnificent new database or data mining software. And on Friday, you blow up the balloons and you pour the champagne and you launch your product. And on Monday, Oracle announces a similar inferior product. You are still just as dead. 1,500 salespeople traveling around the world wearing Armani suits, driving big rental cars with unlimited expense accounts. You are just dead. You removed 83 failure points from your startup, but nobody asked Larry Ellison what his new product introduction plan was for the month of March. So who is this crazy American up here talking to you? Before every student in this room was born, I began doing startups. At the age of 22, I had a fabulous, very well-paying job, and I went home to my working class parents and told them I was quitting, not because I wanted to get rich, but because I had an idea and a vision, and I wanted to be my own boss. I was so excited about it. I had been trying to figure it out for 6 or 8 months. My parents were very upset. They thought my father actually started talking to people about what psychologist should I see to talk me out of it. I knew I wanted to be the boss. I knew I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. And I knew that this wonderful job I had would drive me crazy if I was doing the same thing every day for the next 40 years of my life. Started that first business shortly after my 22nd birthday, sold it 17 years later for a very nice pile of money, started 6 more companies over the next 20 years, and most importantly, 2 of the 7 were wildly successful, 2 of them were moderately successful, and 3 of them were the most educational startups of the 7. They are what I have lovingly come to call my DTT investments. DTT. Remember that acronym, direct to the toilet. You learn so much more when you spend 6 months or a year working 80, 100, 120 hours a week on a business, and at some point, the only thing to do is to put the business in the toilet, flip the handle, go have a couple of beers, get up the next day, and start number 4 or number 5, because that's what entrepreneurs do. We basically don't know how to do anything else. And I hope that when you think about the company you're starting, you don't think about the great wealth that one of you in this room will achieve from your startup. You think about the freedom, the independence, the chance to chart your own journey, and the opportunity to work on something you absolutely love and that excites you every single day. Because hoping that someday you will be Mark Zuckerberg or Sergey and Larry is not going to get you through the many dark days that happen in every startup, including Facebook and Google and Groupon and all the superstars. And you have to be in love with what you're doing, with what you believe what you're doing can achieve, either for the world or for a marketplace or for your own personal satisfaction. And if you are doing this for the money, get a job at Spurbank or Gazprom or someplace and go buy lottery tickets or gamble or whatever. You probably have a better chance of making a lot of money one of those ways. Anyway, I retired from my last company now, I guess about 14 years ago, because I didn't know what else to do. I got involved with, over the next decade, 27 different startups. 7 of them went public, 6 more DTT, direct into the toilet, and everything in between. And those in-betweens and the toilet bowl are the real lessons in entrepreneurship. They teach you what not to do, because when you have a 385, or I had one of my IPOs was $906 to 1, you don't stop and analyze what you did. You are too busy telling yourself how brilliant you are. But when you flush $1 million bill down the toilet, and it's your own money, not your investor's money, you think long and hard about the lessons you learned, because you surely don't want to repeat them. So I should also mention my favorite startup of all, my proudest startup of all, my 33-year-old daughter, who has a PhD in psychology, was probably the most expensive startup of all, but also at the highest rate of return, and particularly now that she is creating subsidiaries, 2 beautiful little grandchildren. It's a particularly happy event. But the mistakes I've made building startups, Steve and I believe that between us, we have made more than 500 stupid startup mistakes, and we tried hard to capture them all in this book. And I don't know if any of you were in school here when Steve visited St. Petersburg a few years ago and spoke at this university, but writing a book with Steve Blank and Bob Dorf is an extremely difficult task, because you have 2 guys who have to agree on every one of the 117,000 words, and both of those guys are always sure they are always right. So let me tell you, the 2 chairs in Steve's living room where we had sometimes all-night debates about the process for optimizing a web commerce business, or the strategy for identifying customer segments, those chairs are worn out and have burn marks all over them. And we've been particularly honored. The book is now in 14 different languages. This is the month of the P's. This month, Portuguese, Polish, and some other language that starts with a P. This was a great line when I wrote it. And Persian, there we go, came out. And we have about 9 or 10 more languages on the way. So let's talk about what's in the book, okay? First, everybody always used to think that this is what a startup was. It was a bunch of crazy people just like you who could go without sleep for days, could live on cold pizza, caffeine, sleep under their desk, and work until they got lucky. But we've learned a lot since then. Startups are not just about vision, because most of the time that vision is a little cockeyed, it's a little blurry, and it takes more than perspiration and luck to build a great business. Sometimes perspiration and luck will get you a nice little business that has a couple of exciting months. Look at the people at Zynga, where their business dropped by 80 or 90% in just a few months. Everybody was celebrating Zynga as the next great online game company. Or Draw Something, which was purchased for $200 million and 3 months later was worth about 5% of that amount, because it was a fun game to play for a little while, and before anybody noticed, the customers got tired. And remember, what you're trying to build is repeatable, sustainable, scalable, profitable. Not a 3-month success. That's a lot of fun until you have to sweep up the pieces, sell the furniture, close the business, and start the next one. So we know that these visions are blurry, and that the way you make your own luck is by working hard and seizing opportunity and taking risk. You don't just get lucky, you put yourself in a place to be lucky. We also used to believe that startups were just smaller versions of big companies, right? It had a president, a finance person, a product manager, a salesperson, all the things that a big company had, just smaller. We learned that from these guys. This is the class of 1908, the very first Master of Business Administration granted by Harvard University over 100 years ago. Trained a bunch, all white Anglo-Saxon men, how to make management decisions in big businesses. So these were the guys who started investing in or managing startups. And they said, oh, we just apply the same rules, only there's a few less zeros in every number. But the reality is a startup has almost nothing to do with an established business. It's totally unlike a business. In fact, it's really not a business at all until you get it to the point where what that business does is repeatable, scalable, and profitable. The fundamental difference, and probably Steve's greatest contribution to entrepreneurship, is recognizing that companies know lots of things, right? They know facts. They know who their competitors are, what their prices are, where they sell, who their customers are, what the range of products is, how to get their customers. And so they can create the 2015 business plan based on what they learned in 2014. But a startup on its first day has no customers by definition. It doesn't know what its product is, who its competitors are, what its market is, what it should price its product at. And so on day one of your life in a startup, you begin life with two objectives. One is to put yourself out of business and turn your startup into a company. And two is to go on a search for the ingredients of that company that will give you a repeatable, scalable, profitable business. We used to think for a century, because this is what they taught at Harvard Business School, that step one in this process was a 50, 60-page business plan with a bunch of spreadsheets at the back of it. How many of you have written all or part of a business plan so far in your lives? Not as many as I would think, but hopefully that's because we're having some kind of an effect on the way you and your university are thinking, right? All you need to do is write this document and then when somebody, an investor, hands you a check, you assume the golden rule applies. The guy with the gold gave me some of it, so he must think this is a plan to get rich. So I'm just going to do exactly what the plan says. But let's think for a minute about what's in that business plan. We know it's beautifully formatted. We know that all of the headlines and subheads are in 14-point Arial bold, and the margins are beautiful, and the footers and the headers are beautiful. And I will almost guarantee you that there are 5 spreadsheets at the back of that plan, and on the last of those spreadsheets, the far right-hand column, the top right-hand number is a 9-digit number, and the bottom right-hand number is somewhere between 15 and $20 million. Why? Because serious Series A investors want to see a company that can get to $100 million in revenue and 15 to 20% profitability in 5 years. So page 5, year 5, full year number, 100 million plus. Actually, we believe Microsoft has an Easter egg inside of Excel where you can put down your starting number and it rolls out 60 months that somehow magically total 100 million and 15, 16 million in profit. Now, what's the problem with that business plan? Everybody needs to know what they're going to do. Investors need to know, what they're investing in. The problem with the business plan is it is 2% fact and 98% fairy tales, right? How can you sit here today and possibly tell me what your revenue is going to be in the second quarter of 2015, or how many customers you're going to have in the first half of 2016? You can't, so you make it up so that it tells a good story to an investor. Steve and I are on a global crusade to move the teaching of business plan writing out of the business school and into the place where it belongs in the university, into the English department, in the fiction section, because the only facts in a business plan are usually at least half of the bios of the founders and the competitive analysis. You make everything else up. Customers are going to buy this once a month, and they're going to refer 3 friends when they're happy, and the friends are going to buy it once every other month and refer 2 friends. It's all fairy tales. And when you go to make this forecast and about your 3rd or 4th board meeting with your investors, they say, gee, guys, you told us you were going to do $82,000 in sales in month 4, and you did 14,000. What happened? Well, we didn't know. We just sort of made that number up because we knew you needed to see a number like that in order to invest. We had no idea how much we were really going to sell. So why waste all that time, usually 2 or 3 months, writing and formatting and proofreading and making flow charts and Gantt charts and beautiful diagrams that are all fairy tales? All it's missing is the magic wand and the little dress and the, sparkles. And so what we now know is that because customers never get to read your business plan, nobody knows how much they're supposed to spend, how often they're supposed to buy, where they're supposed to learn about your product. So, and customer isn't obligated to do what you say they're going to do anyway. So why waste your time? In one of the programs I run, almost identical to the Launch Guru's Startup Academy, an 8-week program in Bogota, Colombia, with a bunch of really bright entrepreneurs, no older than any of you. We had 25 startup teams using the customer development methodology for 8 weeks. It's my best result yet. The 8 weeks was chosen because they used to take a course at the university, 8 weeks to write a business plan. We said, let's see if we can do 8 weeks to build a business. So on day 1, they arrived with a business idea sketched out elegantly on a cocktail napkin with beer stains on it and things like that. We have an idea for a business. And by the end of that 8th week, 9 of the 25 teams had customer revenue, real revenue from real sales. One of them in the enterprise software space had a $50,000 purchase order in their hand and 2 more that they had shaken hands on in 8 weeks. Another B2C company had completed 305 transactions. A third one got its first $10,000 order. I got an email from them a few days ago. They just had a $200,000 month and have closed a third piece of investment that puts them over $1 million in invested capital a year after they graduated from the program. Spend the time not making pretty plans, but talking to customers and finding out what the customers want, so that by the time you are ready to launch your business, you understand what they want and you give it to them. Because giving your board members what you want, they've already given you their money. They're not going to buy your product. They're going to expect it for free as investors. Figure out how to get to the customer. This is hardest among people just like you, and it's hardest among Russian people just like you. I am a Russian engineer. I have a master's with honors. I know what the customer wants. I know how to build it. Leave me alone. I'm going to lock myself in a room and build this product, and it will sell. And 3 months later, that engineer unlocks his or her door, buys the balloons, opens the champagne, launches the business, and only then, after they spent 3 months of their life building, coding, working on this product, to then discover that it's not really what customers want after all. Or customers think they should pay 1/4 of what the engineer thinks they should pay, or what makes sense for the business. Why wouldn't you figure out all that stuff that makes your product into a business while you are building the product? And that is the fundamental strength, the fundamental idea of the customer development model. So rather than spend that 2 months writing that silly fictional fairy tale business plan, instead develop a business model. What's a business model? Business model is a single sheet of paper, one side of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, where you describe all of the key elements that make your product into a business. It looks like this, okay? 9 boxes describing the key elements. Whoops, what did I do? Bad thing, there we go. Describing all of the key elements of your business. And the way to think about this is from here over, we're talking about the things that interact with the customer-facing side. And the other side is the plumbing, is the transmission, is the works of the business. So you start with the right side because you don't need plumbing if you're not going to build the house, or if you don't have enough money to buy the materials to build the house. Start on the right, work your way over to the left. The business model is the development of a rather brilliant Swiss PhD, Alex Osterwalder. I encourage you to read tons of his work at osterwalder.com. Get a sense of this, download it, play with it, use it as a way to think about your business. So let me talk just a little bit about a few of the boxes. Obviously, the heart of this is the customer. Customer segments is the place to start. Who exactly am I building this for? Not, Russian men 25 to 49 who make more than $50,000 a year. That's too many people. Who are the 20 or 200 or 500 people who are going to be most excited to find out that your product exists. Because if you can pin that down, focus on that, and make them happy, that's a great starting point. But if you can't make the most important customers happy and excited and get their money, how will you ever sell it to less interested people, to the rest of the world? So start with the narrowest, tightest focus you can on who is the dream customer. If you were selling a new kind of bandage, your customer segment would be men and women lying in the street bleeding. Because when you go to say, "Hi, I'm Bob, I'm selling this new bandage," they're not going to ask you about the fiber or the cost or what colors it comes in. They're going to say, "I understand it's a prototype. I understand it's not perfect, but I want it right now. How much? Here's my money." You want that kind of enthusiasm from your first customers. Why? Not because you need their money. You need their feedback. That bleeding man is going to tell you how to make the bandage better, not for equity, not for a discount, but because he wants to bleed less. He has a personal interest in you making a better product, and he's going to coach you in how to do that, whether it's a bandage or a software product or a website. The first people who are most enthusiastic, find me an accounts receivable manager in a business with a stack of bills in their inbox this high. That person isn't going to ask to see the code, isn't going to QA the software if your proposition is, "We cut your receivable collection time in half." Find those burning platform customers and invite them to train you to make your product better. So far, we don't really have a company. All we have is customers. So what are you going to sell them? That's box 2, the value proposition. What is my product? What are its features and benefits? What's it going to, is it going to save you time? Is it going to save you money? Is it going to do things faster or do things better? What problems is it going to solve? What needs is it going to fill? And most importantly, how does it compare to all the other choices I have as a customer to solve this problem or fill this need? When you get these 2 boxes right, you have the first foundational step toward building a successful business. And if you are a passionate engineer, most of you think that this box all by itself is a business. And one of the things I love, particularly when talking to engineers, is that this is an in-your-face reminder that the product is more or less 1/9 of what makes your business a successful, repeatable, scalable, profitable business. Engineers love to think code and think solutions. Code and solutions and product are one component of what makes a successful business. You need them all, or you get to come and flush my toilet with your work and your money in it. And one other thing before I leave this pair of boxes. This is what's known as product market fit. I have a value proposition, a promise to customers. Give me money and I will do this for you, and I'll do it better than Intuit and cheaper than Oracle and faster than SAP. And you know who the customer is that wants that promise. And when you get those 2 to match, right? I know who the customer is when I show this value proposition to them, not all the time, but on a predictable amount of time. 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, I get the order. product market fit. If you don't have it, go no further. Go back to square one. Rethink your features. Rethink your pricing. Rethink your offer. Maybe you're selling it to the wrong people. Without product market fit, you are building a house without a foundation. Without, you're building it in quicksand. There is no business opportunity without it. Then you figure out how you're going to get the product from your company to the customer's possession. Is it through stores? Is it through the web? Do you need your own sales force? What is the delivery mechanism, the channel? And how much of every ruble of revenue is that channel going to take out of your bank account? If you're selling through national retail chains, that can often be half of every ruble goes to them, not for doing anything for you, just for laying it on a shelf. And then you can give them more money if you want to advertise in their circulars, or you want a sign next to your product, or you want them to put it someplace where somebody can see it instead of in a dark corner. Figuring out your channel strategy is based not on what you like, it's based on where your customers want to find your product, right? They don't sell a lot of perfume at gas stations, and they don't sell a lot of gasoline in ladies' clothing stores. Why? It's not where we expect to find it. Put the product where your customer expects to find it. Then you get to the toughest box of the 9 on the canvas, the death box, as I call it. Osterwalder called this customer relationships. What do you do to keep a customer happy once you get them? Steve and I looked at that and said, sorry, wrong box. We redefined Osterwalder's box as the 3 most critical jobs of any startup. It's not code, code, code. It's get, keep, and grow. How am I going to get my customers at a price I can afford? Once I get them, how am I going to keep them? And if I can keep them, how am I going to grow them in 2 very different but equally important ways? First, how am I going to sell them more products, more often, more volume, right? Obvious. And second, and much more important, particularly in web-delivered or web-marketed products, how am I going to grow my customers by using my happy customers to virally refer me to more customers? It is the most honest, most powerful form of marketing on earth. When you find a product you like so much that you tell your friends or coworkers about it, not because you're going to get a coupon or 10% off or something for free, but because you're doing your friends a favor by introducing them to something that's done a good job for you. This is a bit of an ancient history lesson, but the first company on the internet to do this brilliantly, anybody in the room still have a Hotmail account? Anybody? You also have a pet dinosaur, Rector, right? What was the last line of every one of the hundreds of millions of Hotmails? You can have your own free Hotmail account. Just click here, right? So when the rector sent his friends an email, he endorsed Hotmail as I've chosen to use this. And at the bottom of every email he sent, and from what I hear, he sends quite a few, there was an advertisement. The rector endorses Hotmail. It built that business to a multi-$100 million business without a dime spent on marketing. What a brilliant way to build a business. They sold it to AOL for hundreds of millions of dollars, AOL has brilliantly made it worth about a third of that purchase price, as they've done to more than a few of their investments. But what got it to the hundreds of millions was growing customers the honest, old-fashioned way. Personal endorsements and referrals, in this case, at no cost whatsoever. If you wait till your product is done to figure this out, you are dead. There is the most unpredictable box on the canvas. Lots of people say, oh, well, I can buy Google AdWords for $2 a piece to get my customers. And then I say, well, gee, and how many of the people who click on that link will spend more than the average 7 seconds at your website? Well, usually a good guess is 1 in 100. And how many of those 1 in 100 who spend more than 7 seconds at your website actually buy something? A good guess, 1 in 100. So that $2 AdWord is $2 to buy, but it takes $20,000 to get a customer. 100 times 100 times 2, right? That's a fine cost of getting customers if you're selling houses or Learjets or Mercedes-Benz or Bentley. If you're selling $30 software, bye-bye, you're dead, right? Understand that, test it, figure it out before you start spending the money. Because in 1996 and 97, in the peak of the internet bubble, you could go to an investor and say, oh, and by the way, we need $3 million for a 30-second Super Bowl ad, and that's going to make us rich. And the investor would say, okay, sounds good. Work for pets.com, work for this one, work for that one, here's the money, right? Because in 96, 97, 98, investors were like drunks in a casino, throwing piles of money at startups to catch the next miracle. You could have raised money for poop in a bag. Poop translates, I assume. Poop is what comes out of the back end of your dog. Poopinabag.com. You could have raised $5 million for that. In fact, I think I gave them an investment back in the day. Unpredictable cost of marketing. 12 or 15 companies went out of business after spending their $3 million on the Super Bowl. I believe the number was 100 internet.com TV commercials in the 1999 Super Bowl, and I believe 4 or 5 of those companies remain alive today. You have to figure this out. For most engineers, it's not what they're into. It's not what they think about. But you really do this using the scientific method. Test, measure, iterate. Test, measure, iterate. Test, not with $3 million, but with $3 or $30 or $100. Most of your tests will fail. And then one day you'll find that a line at the bottom of an email or some silly little banner ad or some viral video, which costs you almost nothing, is the key to your marketing, your get customers success. The greatest example of this in the last couple of years, since investors said, we're not buying $3 million Super Bowl ads anymore, and we're not investing money in marketing until you can prove to me scientifically that it works. A company called Mailbox.com launched about a year ago. The idea was to organize your personal life through your inbox. All of us hate our inboxes. It's always full. We can never get to the dream state of inbox zero. And many of us use our inbox to organize our life. I send myself reminders all the time. To Bob, from Bob. Don't forget to get home for dinner. Your wife's going to beat you if you don't show up. Don't forget to send this to so-and-so. Reminder, you have a 6 o'clock appointment. Because my head is in my inbox so much of the time that I don't toggle over to my calendar. So for a whopping marketing budget of $300, Dropbox produced 2 very cute videos about how chaotic all of our lives are, and they started sending them out. They got picked up by TechCrunch and a couple of other tech newsletters, and within a few weeks, 1.6 million people had seen those cute videos at a total cost of $200 US. 1.6 million. That's about, probably if you bought that advertising, it's easily $100,000, if not twice that amount. And within another week or two, they had 750,000 email addresses of people who wanted to do a free trial download of mailbox.com. What was the problem? This happened so fast, they were nowhere near done building the product. Minor problem, right? Not a problem at all. They started emailing those people, we're coming, we're almost there. Imagine when the investor asks you the most painful question any investor can ask, which is the one they often are too polite to ask, but it's the only one they really care about. Okay, great resume, great idea, great market opportunity, great product idea. How do you know if anybody's going to buy it? Well, sir, we have 750,000 people who'd like to try a free download knowing that it's only free for 10 days. Wow. Imagine that. I have a retail store with 750,000 people outside waiting to get in and spend their money on my product. It worked so extraordinarily well for Dropbox that they never built the damn product. They sold the for Mailbox. They sold the company to Dropbox for $100 million cash without ever launching the product. Why? They proved that there was customer demand for their product, and they proved it at the huge expense of a bucket of perspiration and $200 US. It's the scientific method. You guys and ladies are good at that. Hypothesis, test the hypothesis, experiment, run the experiment, count the noses. If it didn't work, change the hypothesis and do it again until the rat either dies or flies and becomes Superman. You know how to do this. It's the engineer's way to learn marketing. Think of it as a math experiment, not creative, wacky advertising stuff that my crazy hippie friends do. If you don't get this box right, you have no business. It is step 2 in building a business that lasts, of value. And then last, and to some degree, least important, at least in the early days, if I get those 4 boxes right, can I ever make any money at this? How much am I going to sell it for? How many of them do I really think I'm going to sell? How much is it going to cost me to make it? No Excel required. Do this on a cocktail napkin for now, because you're going to get better at it as you learn more, experience more from the only people who matter, your customers. Once you have some comfort that eventually this will be a business, keep on going, keep on talking to customers, keep on moving. So let's keep on moving over here. The rest of the thing I'm not going to talk about now, because if you don't get this side right, you don't even have to think about this side of the canvas. So start with the right-hand side, the part that engages the customer, and every time your experiment doesn't work, do what any good entrepreneur does. Run another experiment, and another, and another. Are you explaining the product the wrong way? Are you talking to the wrong customers? Keep trying till you find the magic formula. Now, when you finish this canvas, right, you normally don't spend more than a day doing your first draft of the canvas. What do you really have? You really have the same fairy tales you have in your 50-page, beautifully illustrated business plan. But you have them in a day instead of 8 weeks. And your testing begins on day 2 instead of day 57. So you picked up 56 work days to figure it out. And why are those days important? Because the only fact in your startup on day 1 is that every morning when you get up, there will be less money in your business bank account. And you are in a race against time with that zero bank balance. And there are only 3 solutions to that. Number 1, revenue from customers. Number 2, I just 4 solutions, to be honest. Number 2, show enough enthusiasm, customer traction, customer interest to get an investor to fund your journey to the next step. Number 3, call your uncle the oligarch. And number 4, go to church or marry very, very well. There is no other way unless you have learned how to rob a bank and not get caught. You have got to demonstrate revenue or traction, or as sure as it's daylight outside, that bank balance is going to 0. But acknowledge that all these things are is really guesses. And then acknowledge that the guesses are meaningless. They're your or my best idea about what's going to make this business work. And this is where you put that canvas up on the wall and you begin the next and more critical step of the customer development process, customer discovery, where you use feedback from your customers to validate or invalidate every one of those guesses. We're only going to talk tonight about the first of 4 steps of customer development because it is so rich and it is life or death to your startup. It sort of gets easier as you get beyond step 1. Because at the end of step 1, you know who your customers are, what they want to buy from you. You have proven to yourself that when you show your product to a customer at some predictable rate they buy, and you know how to find those customers at a price you can afford. Now you have to get out of the building yourself and start looking those customers in the eye and seeing whether they believe all your guesses or not. So step 1, you are not selling. This is what entrepreneurs love to hate. You are listening to your customers, getting their feedback, letting them lead the conversation. You are testing these hypotheses or guesses on your business model canvas, and you are doing this continuously. Anybody in the room own a BlackBerry? Remember those? Any BlackBerry owners? Right? That was the Wall Street darling for about 5 years. Then one day somebody walked into the BlackBerry boardroom with something called an iPhone. And they laughed. Oh, nobody's ever going to type on a glass keyboard. People need a tactile keyboard. Who would want their music next to their email? You know, who would want all these other games and crap in the way of their daily business? Right? There's a Groupon out there for BlackBerry stock. You can get 1 share of BlackBerry stock for 5% of the price 2 years ago. They stopped talking to their customers. They declared victory. JCPenney, Circuit City, Zynga, lots and lots of companies said, okay, we're big and rich and successful. Groupon. Groupon now has a coupon out there where you can buy a share of Groupon stock for less than 10% of the IPO first day price. What a great coupon to get, right? You have to do this from the day you start until the day you either sell your company or shut it down. And you, the founder, have to do it yourself. As Steve Blank loves to say, you have to see their pupils dilate or see their eyes close when you start talking to them about your product. You have to sense it, smell it. The only one who can hear a comment about a product idea from a customer and say, wow, that's a better idea than ours. If we make that change, this could really be a big business. The founder is the only one empowered to make that call. So when you show your product to somebody and they say, gee, that's pretty good, but if it could keep a permanent record of every transaction or every entry, I think everybody in our company would have to use it. You go back to your office, you call in the development team, hey guys, we need a log, permanent log, searchable, whatever. You can blow the whistle and change the future of your company. There are two key steps to customer discovery. First, my favorite step. It's what I love. Again, I like dogs, so it comes out of the back end of your dog, crap. The Boba Dorf give a crap test. You are about to spend 5 years of your life. If you are a serious entrepreneur, you're going to be working 80, 100, 120 hours a week on your startup if you are committed to building a startup that's going to scale. Don't you want to make sure that there's a market for this thing that you're going to give up your friends, your spouse, your dog for 5 years? Don't you want to be working on something where there's a market opportunity? And so if nobody is interested in solving the problem that your company's product is going to solve, you don't have a business. Isn't it better to find that out in the first week or two or month or two than to find that out after you've bought the balloons and the champagne and launched the product? Are you filling a big need or solving an urgent, serious problem? Is it a problem I have once a day, once a week? Is it a problem where I worry about losing my house or my job or my money or my time or my spouse? If it's not a serious problem, if it doesn't make the customer's top 5 or top 10 and do it quite regularly, it's probably not a market. It's probably not a big enough market opportunity to warrant your startup. Once you have done that and proven to yourself that you are solving a big problem, then you move on to step 2. Usually this step takes 3 or 4 or 5 tries, right? You're talking to the wrong people. You're talking to the users, not the buyers. You're pitching it wrong. You're stressing the time-saving benefit when you should really be stressing the money-saving benefit. So you change the pitch, and you go out, and you try again. And only when you are honestly convinced that this is a real market opportunity do you move forward to step 2 and start to test whether, gee, you said, collecting accounts receivable is a huge problem, and if you didn't do a better job, you would likely lose that job you have. Let me show you how this software tool works and what it does and show some of the results. Tell me, do you think a product like this would solve the problem for you? You really want more than a yes, thank you, I would be interested when you launch that. Please call me when it's ready to sell. What you want to hear is, I can't wait for it to come out. I need it right now. I don't care how much it costs. Can I get it right now? Because that's real customer demand. And until you see it, keep trying, because launching a lukewarm product into a mediocre market opportunity is clearly a death sentence. So we're up here in St. Petersburg. I'll use the frozen example appropriately for good customer discovery. We're launching a new industrial battery for a startup within General Electric, right, the sixth largest corporation in the world, hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue, doing a startup. It was just like your startup, with two little exceptions. The first, their initial seed capital funding was $100 million. They had a rousing staff of 8, just like many of you, and they had one other condition, and that was the general manager was told, here's your check for $100 million. If you haven't hit $1 billion in revenue by 2016, you have failed and you are fired. They had no product, they had some technology, they had no factory, they had a burnt out building with a dirt floor because they didn't even know what they were making. How could you have a factory for it? The characteristics of this battery suggested that it would do very well in extreme low temperatures, sort of like, February here in St. Petersburg. One interesting market that came up that we talked about, or our hypothesis was, this would probably be an interesting way to power forklift trucks that operate inside frozen food warehouses. So how do you figure that out? You go out and you spend time not reading about frozen food warehouses. You put on your Cossack hat, your fur coat, your fur mittens, your leggings, your fur boots, and you spend a day in a frozen food warehouse shadowing the manager of the warehouse to understand what his life is like and how his operation works. And as Rick and the manager are walking around this warehouse in Chicago, owned by Safeway supermarkets, the size of 6 soccer fields. And everywhere you go, it's 20 degrees below zero. It gets pretty cold in there in about 15 minutes, right? Like it does here in January having a cigarette out behind the building. So they're walking around. There's the frozen pizza. Over here's the ice cream. This is the frozen vegetables. All the time, all the forklift trucks are going that way. One after another. So tell me about these forklift trucks, Mr. Manager. Well, we have 45 of them running at all times. Well, what's all times? 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, including Christmas and New Year's and every other holiday. And these are union drivers who make a base pay of about $60,000. So you can imagine if you multiply 60,000 by 45 times 3 times 265, that's one hell of a payroll, right? Why is everybody driving that way? Is that where the men's room is? Is that where the coffee pot is? No, actually, it's where the batteries are. What do you mean where the batteries are? Well, the car batteries that run these forklifts only last 90 minutes at 20 below zero. So every 90 minutes, every driver in the place has to go back there to the batteries, takes a half hour to unbolt your batteries, put them in the charger, grab some charged batteries, install them in your forklift. All of a sudden, you could do the math on the back of a pizza box. 25% of a payroll in the tens of millions of dollars, right? Was how much you could save if you could give them a battery that could work for an entire 8 hours, which the GE battery could do. All of a sudden, the price of the damn battery was irrelevant. The fact that it was 50 times the price of the car battery that ran the forklift was irrelevant. GE found a huge market. If you had read research papers about that market, you would have never figured out why all the forklifts were going that way or what the operating cost of those forklifts going that way was to the business. A huge, huge market opportunity because one of the members of the founding team showed up. He had a McKinsey report on his desk about that market. It didn't communicate 1% of the excitement and the opportunity that's showing up and seeing it with your own eyes communicates. This is why you can't do surveys. You can't do focus groups. You've got to look your customer in the eye and see what turns them on, what excites them, what doesn't. Get their ideas about how to make your business better. You start this with what we call the minimum viable product, the simplest, fastest, easiest manifestation of your product, something that gives the customer a feel for what it is and what it does, but not a functional or fully built product. Something that a customer can react to. They can't react to you talking about it, to a sketch. They can't react to a PowerPoint the same way they can react to a prototype, even if it's made out of styrofoam, chewing gum, duct tape, a fork stuck in the side of it, whatever. Let them touch it. Let them feel it. Let them tell you, gee, it's a little big for me. Do you think you could make it 2/3 of the size and have the same functionality so it would fit in my pocket? Sure we can. If you've already built the molds and, you know, the dies and the tools, for the larger side, you learn that too late. But if you learn it early enough and you inject that feedback into your product development, you've made something that's far more appealing to far more customers. And so with every one of those 9 boxes, you're testing your hypotheses. You create an experiment to go out and show it to customers. You have a guesstimate of what you hope the outcome of that test will be. You run the test, you see whether it worked or not, and if it's a success, you keep moving forward. If it's a failure, you redesign and you do another test. And when it doesn't work, you come back to the office and you don't moan and you don't cry. You change something. You pivot. Now, here in Russia, pivot means drink beer. I'm sure none of you would ever do that, of course, but pivoting helps pivoting. Here, you know, you found a problem, your business has hit a brick wall, have a couple of beers with your other founders. Talk about what should we change to maybe do better the next time we show our product to customers. Make that fundamental change to your business. It's not a crisis. It's not a failure. It's an education. Do it quickly. Do it based on good, solid, consistent feedback from your customers, and then go out and test it again and again until you are sure that you're seeing a consistent pattern of customer response to your business model, right? In the case of GE, in another market, in the cell phone tower market, where this battery works very well as backup power, we're having a lot of trouble getting telcos to buy the battery, because each battery to provide backup power to a tower, each battery costs $60,000. They say, oh, we love it, and if you say it's going to do this, we would trust you because you're GE and you're a credible company. But $60,000 comes out of our capital purchase account. Our capital purchase account has a 3-year cycle. We have already committed to our spending for the next 3 years. So you're going to get fired because you're going to not have your revenue by 2016. So we changed a box on the canvas after hearing that 7 or 8 times. We didn't touch the product. We didn't touch the price. We didn't touch the marketing. We went from a sale to a lease. And instead of paying $60,000 for the battery, you paid $1,200 a month for 5 years. Exactly the same amount of money into GE's wallet, and something that companies could buy now. They are going to do this year more than $100 million in revenue leasing these batteries to cellular telephone companies. Overall, they're going to do about $170 million in revenue. Their 2011 revenue, zero. Okay? They are on track to get from zero to $1 billion in revenue in 5 years. Pivoting, changing something fundamental in your business, not necessarily your product, based on learning from your customers. I haven't told the Steve Blank story for about an hour. I'm starting to twitch. So let me tell you one of the legendary pivot stories of all time, worth just about $8 billion. Steve's data mining company, Epiphany, was running low on money, and one of its target markets was online financial services, which were brand new in 96, 97, 98. Online banking, online stock trading were virtually brand new. And the fact that you could use Steve's software to mine a database of 100,000 or 500,000 customers and create a personal marketing plan for each one of them based on their, money in the bank, their trading history, their behavior, their credit score, and everything you knew about them, Epiphany could pull all of that data out into a profile and real-time create a marketing campaign based on that profile. One of the members of the Epiphany Advisory Board was this really brilliant woman, also a client of mine, Mary Kelly, VP of Database Marketing at Charles Schwab. And so all the Epiphany salespeople, including Steve, were telling all the other financial services companies, we're going to sign Charles Schwab any day. And all the competitors say, well, if you get Schwab, we have to sign on too. The 11th meeting, Steve decided to bring his engineering co-founder, Ben, to the meeting with Mary Kelly because they thought they were going to sell this in at the 6th meeting, and it was now meeting number 11. So they pitched for a while, and Mary is sitting there very unhappy. Finally, she says, Steve, let's not kid around anymore. I told you before, and I am now telling you for the last time, if your product doesn't have householding, we are not going to buy it. What's householding? When Bob Dorf and Francis Dorf live in the same house, you have to merge their two profiles to make an investment recommendation to them. Otherwise, you look like an idiot because you're saying to Bob Dorf, hey, you like stocks that you buy high and go low the minute you buy them. Here are 5 that are doomed to fail that we recommend based on your history. Fran, you like real safe stuff like money markets or bonds. Here's your recommendation, but the computer forgets that we're married and we make those decisions together. Data householding is a 100-year-old term from the direct mail business where you merge those two profiles and you make one recommendation. Epiphany software didn't do that. So Mary said, Steve, Ben, I love you. Get out of my office. You're thrown out. Unless you have householding, we're not buying. So Steve and Ben are driving back to the world headquarters, which happened to be Steve's living room. Nobody talks for about a half hour. Finally, Steve says, what are we going to do? The traffic in San Francisco is a close second to Moscow traffic. What are we going to do, Ben? Ben says, about what? About Schwab. We are doomed. We're out of business if we don't get Schwab, and they just threw us out after 11 tries, and we have a friend there. Ben says, tell him to read page 6 of the product spec. Steve says, what are you talking about? The product spec is 5 pages long. Ben sort of smirks and smiles and says, not anymore. They go back to the office. They type up a one-page, page 6 product spec. They call the 14 engineers into the living room, say, ladies and gentlemen, we got really bad news. We know you have worked the last 4 weekends getting ready for the Schwab presentation. It went terrible. We got thrown out by our good friend Mary Kelly. We need 4 more weekends to build data householding And by the way, the stuff you were working on for the last 4 weeks, rip it out. Throw the code on the floor. They don't want it. 4 weeks later, they got the Schwab account. Then they got the JP Morgan account, the E-Trade account, the Quicken account, and on and on and on to an IPO that quickly went to $8 billion. One meeting attended by the two founders. If the salespeople had gone in there, their report would have been, we're never going to get Schwab. Let's go after number 2. We're dead there. When the founders heard it, they had the authority and the motivation to fix it. And sure, those engineers were upset, but they were all stockholders. They understood the difference between getting a marquee client like that and going to their kids' baseball or soccer game on Saturday. They did the job. They made the pivot, the dramatic change in one element of their business. They went on to tremendous success. Doing these quickly matters. Again, why? You're racing that declining bank balance. So you have to do it agilely, quickly, on sometimes incomplete information, which engineers hate. But you are a startup. You're not General Electric. You've got to decide when you instinctively, as an entrepreneur, think you've heard enough to tell you to make the change. Typically, you will make a bunch of pivots in your business from the first idea to the product that succeeds. You can do this so much faster, so much more easily with web and mobile products because you can change almost anything almost overnight. And if you have trouble changing your website by tomorrow, call me. My 4-year-old granddaughter can probably do it for you on Wix.com. When we were doing websites 96, 97, 98, I remember at Gorp.com, one of my $1 million tuition toilet flushes, we decided to change the color palette of the site. 3 engineers worked around the clock 4 days to change the color palette, which you can now do on most websites in under 15 minutes. Listen to your customers. Hear what they say. If you're not sure that they're giving you good advice, your number one weapon is the A/B test. Show half of the customers page A, half of the customers page B. Monitor who clicks where, which one generates more clicks, more revenue. Throw away the loser, put the winner up, and then try to beat the winner with the next alternative. And do this again and again to optimize your business, right? So, who do you call when you go do this customer discovery? You don't call your friends, your family, your classmates, because when you show them your idea, they know you want positive feedback. So they will always find something good to say about your startup because they know that's why you asked. They might, and they might even say, sure, let me know when it's ready. I'll buy one, hoping, praying that you forget, right? It's what I call the ugly baby rule. You can bring the ugliest baby in the history of the world to Christmas dinner. Everybody will find something nice to say. What a cute beard. I've never seen such a beautiful beard on a 4-month-old girl. Or look at those ears. All 4 of them match. How cute, right? That's what they're going to tell you about your startup, about your value proposition, because they know that's what you want to hear. So use your family, use your friends to introduce you to other people who don't have an obligation to tell you nice, happy, warm, fuzzy stuff. And whatever you do when you're doing customer discovery, do not sell. Entrepreneurs hate to hear this. You are there only to listen. If you start selling, you get a whole other set of defenses where people don't want to part with their money. I have a student at Columbia right now who's invented a new, the neck pillows that you buy at the airport to sleep comfortably on like airplane flights to Siberia or New York, depending on which of those is your favorite destination. He's got one that has suction cups that go on the airplane window, and it's got like a triangular shaped pillow, so you're actually putting your head down on it. How did he do his customer discovery? He made 6 of them. And he went to Pennsylvania Station, the big railroad station in New York, with them strung around his neck, and he walked up to people. Would you like to buy it? Oh, yeah, I'd really love to. Okay, well, here, give me $20. And, oh, well, I'd like to not buy it right now. I want to think about it. Well, why don't you want to buy it now? Well, I got to carry it. I'm not going home. Eventually, he sold his 6 pillows. But what he learned in the process was, yes, he had a business opportunity. No, he did not find a sales channel. Walking around the station trying to sell them off your neck is not a repeatable, scalable, profitable business. But he found customer enthusiasm for the product. Now he's got to go back and research his channel. The best example of this I have seen in 5 years, a startup team in Bogota, Colombia, doing warehouse automation, where you pick and pack the items, put them in a box, seal the box, put a label on it, and ship it without a human being ever touching the order. It's called, warehouse automation, robotics. They made 4 customer discovery calls to talk about whether this was a problem, whether the company would be interested, and so forth. And they called me, Professor Bob, we don't know what to do. You told us we should go talk to 50 customers. Everybody we talk to says, shut up, stop talking, go write up a contract. We want to sign it and start now. That is product market fit, ladies and gentlemen. It's like, sex. It's as good as life gets, right? Everybody you show it to wants it now, doesn't want to talk about it. They want to give you money. So I said, Professor Bob, what do we do? You said 50 customers. We only talked to 4. He said, you do what a good entrepreneur does. You take my book, you put it in the bottom drawer of your desk, you get those contracts signed, and you let the companies pay the tuition as they teach you how to make your business great. 18 months later, 17 million in revenue, right? This is the difference between testing your idea with your customer and going out and buying $2 million worth of factory automation equipment and setting up a warehouse and hiring 6 engineers and making brochures and advertising and press articles and then seeing if you can get an order. That is the dream state. It is as good as it gets. In my 7 businesses, I've had it happen once. That was in my last business, business that we grew to 450 people, $50 million in revenue in under 7 years. At about the 2nd year, we hit product market fit. It was a CRM strategy business, and you may remember, most of you are old enough to remember, that our former Vice President Al Gore invented the internet. All of a sudden, companies were trying to figure out how to use it to get close to their customers. And our phone rang off the hook with our target customer segment, the people we thought would be most interested in doing business with us, CEOs and chief marketing officers of Fortune 500 consumer products companies. The product market fit was so good, we didn't have time to make sales calls. Everybody wanted us to fly here, give a presentation, fly there, give a presentation. Said, guys, I'm sorry, we are just too busy. So there's 2 ways I will pitch you. 1, you come to our office in Stamford, Connecticut. I'll spend 2 hours with you anytime you want. Free. 2, you send me $20,000 and 2 airplane tickets, and one of my partners and I will come and we'll give you a workshop on CRM, And we'll talk about how you use this methodology to grow your business. We sold 30 of those, 40 of those a year for 5 years, $20,000 plus they paid the travel. And the deal was, first of all, the discussion about how their company would use it was the customer writing our consulting proposal to them. Well, we should do this, and we need to test that, and we need to figure this out. We're scribbling away as fast as we can. And if you bought our proposal, we tore up the bill for $20,000. But when you didn't, we picked up $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year in revenue for making sales calls. Product market fit. It is the holy grail of a startup, and you can't build a successful business without it. So when you finished this customer discovery, now you have an investor pitch. We have a value proposition. When we show it to a customer who looks like this, 3 out of 10 times we get an order. It costs us $10 to make a sales call, so we spend $100 to get 3 orders. Each order is worth $1,000. Our cost of sales is 3%. This is going to be a very profitable business according to our scientific testing. You've done 2 things with that. You have taken an immense amount of risk out of the investment for the investor because you've got some proof that maybe this will work. But more important, you have dramatically improved your leverage in the investment because you have created immense value. So you have raised the market value of your investment, which means you get more money giving up less stock, preserving that stock for yourself, for your founding team members. So when you have that product market fit, life gets dramatically easier. Then don't stop till you get it. Once you get it, and you get the cost of customer, the method and the cost of customer acquisition, then it's time to test whether your hypotheses scale. So instead of calling on 10 customers and getting 20% sales, call on 30 customers and see if you get 20% orders. Then call on 60, then call on 120. And if those numbers hold up, you're still getting 2 customers for every 10 sales calls. Time for the Series A, time to expand, build the sales organization, and run like hell toward a really successful business. So at this point, you have answered the question, is my business repeatable and scalable? It may not be profitable yet, but as long as you have a sense it's headed in the right direction, that won't be a problem or a challenge to an investor who sees repeatable and scalable leading to profitable. And you've now found, I hope, at least a few dozen early evangelists, early customers who love what you're doing, who give you free feedback, and most important, who start telling their friends about this great new product they've discovered. And when it doesn't work, you'll go back to the beginning, or you'll go back 3 steps, and you pivot, and you do it again. There are tons of tools that can help you on this journey. Probably the most powerful of these is steveblank.com. There's a page on Steve's website called Startup Tools. It's got hundreds of resources for startups. Free tools, no advertising, nothing is for sale there. It is one of Steve's many generous gifts to the entrepreneurs who made him a wealthy, very happy man. Startup tools, A/B tests, research tools, wireframe tools, everything you can need. Kaufman offers tons of lessons and videos. Success.co used to be Startup Weekend. Lots more information. Obviously, our book, Osterwalder's book, Business Model Design, a piece of software I'll show you in a minute called Lean Launchpad for managing your work through the customer development process. And then starting in May 14th in Moscow, the 8-week Launch Gurus Startup Academy #5, where you live, eat, sleep, and breathe customer development out of the building for 8 weeks with your hands held by me, especially if you're a beautiful young Russian princess, and lots of other seasoned, experienced entrepreneurs who will challenge your thinking, who will kick you out of the building and keep you thinking and working and pivoting until you get your business right. Here's just a couple of quick examples of what Launchpad Central does, where you can follow several teams, and every time you do a customer interview, share the feedback with your team members, with your advisors, investors, professors. Here's an example of what a page like that looks like, reporting on a customer interview. So these I've sort of talked about. April 2nd, there's a national broadcast, free, sponsored by Sberbank in the afternoons, where you can tune in. If you haven't heard enough of me by now, you can hear more online. Compliments of Sberbank, April 2nd, Startup Academy 5, soon after that. So, remember this. It's about the search. You're searching for a business model, repeatable, scalable, profitable. You're searching for a great business, not a okay business, not sure, let me know when it comes out, maybe I'll buy it. That's not how great businesses are built. Please remember two other things more than anything. First, the only opinions that matter are the opinions of your customers. Second, the only way to find them is to get the hell out of your office and get face-to-face with them, where they live, where they work, where they use the product you're going to make. And if this doesn't sound like fun to you, go get a job at, Gazprom or Lukoil or someplace. If you don't wake up every day excited about the challenge, the opportunity, the risk of being a startup founder, go find a beautiful cubicle with health insurance and air conditioning, and you can have a very happy, very different, successful career. Thank you very much. Spasiba.
Thank you very much, Bob. If you don't mind, we will let the audience ask questions. Right. Everybody now will be able to ask questions, and we'll ask Bob to choose 3 best questions. We will award them the Startup's Owners Menu. So please come to the microphone in the center of the audience.
Ladies, you're walking past the microphone.
Hi. We're a startup from Russia, and we're creating an online platform for booking language courses abroad, like English in England, Spanish in Spain, whatsoever. So we have a team, we have a working prototype, and we have launched it 2 weeks ago, and we got about 20 clients, 20,000 euros of revenue and profit, about 1,000 euros.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Good for you. Congratulations. That's terrific.
Thank
Cheer
you.
for this young lady.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was wondering if you like the idea of, booking language courses online, and if you would like to be our mentor, if you do.
Oh, okay. There's a trick question. First, whether I like the idea or not, as I think I've said 15 times, is irrelevant to your chances for success. It's whether your customers like it, and they are showing you that already.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult for me to be a very responsible mentor because I spend most of my life on airplanes where there's no Wi-Fi traveling around the world. But it would be my pleasure if you have specific questions, send them to me. I'm very hard to find, Bob Dorf, no dot, @gmail, and give me a few days, and I'll either write you an answer, or we'll set up a Skype call and chat about it.
Okay.
The other thing I will do is introduce you to one of my star students at Columbia Business School who has launched a similar business based in Germany, but she's teaching English to Germans and German to Americans and French to Russians and Russian to French people. So it's a somewhat different business model, but she's a lovely, successful young woman. She has spent several years working on this, and I suspect she would be a far more helpful mentor than I. So Bob Dorf @gmail, we'll talk, and I'll introduce you to
Shall
her.
I tag my letter or something? Or you would answer straight away? Because I suppose you get a lot of letters.
I read every one.
Okay,
Sometimes it takes
good,
a few
good.
days or a week till I can respond.
Mhm.
I do have a life sort of snuck in there somewhere here and there between airplanes, and a
Okay.
lot of students who are sending me letters like yours, but I try never to lose them. And sometimes you'll get a note from me, I need a few more days. The bullet train this morning, I was actually caught up. I had 3 emails in my inbox when we got to St. Petersburg this morning. It's as close as I ever get to caught up. And in fact, I have a 10-hour airplane ride on Friday, so if you write me on Thursday, you
Okay.
might hear from me sooner than usual.
I will.
Okay? But
Thank you very much.
20,000 euros in 2 weeks. That's a hell of a launch. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And to help you along, a book. Okay, who's next? Okay, that is the bold entrepreneurial approach to mentorship. We are accepting one mentor team tonight, and she has been accepted. Next.
Hello, Bob. Thank you for exciting speech. I want to ask you about, do you pass in last few years some trainings? So do you have some mentors, or you listen some other trainers, or you already studying from your trainee and from your students, which listen you and at your startup school?
It's an interesting question. Actually, one I probably have never been asked. Most of what I learned from you, from interacting with you and seeing smart young entrepreneurs trying things. Sometimes I learn, oh, that doesn't work at your expense. Sometimes I learn there's a bright new way to acquire customers. I'm going to teach 10 other people that. The other thing I do, which I recommend to all of you, is I have all kinds of Google News readers set up. I get my favorite bloggers in my inbox every day. And I also, at Bob Dorf, I tweet articles that I see of interest almost every day. I tweet 2 or 3 articles out to my students, to my, whatever it is, 6,000, 7,000 Twitter followers. So if you want a steady stream of learning about aspects of startup development and marketing, and one other thing, at steveblank.com is a very long list of his favorite bloggers. We don't agree on all of them, but overall, we totally agree. So there are a couple of ways that I try to stay current with what's going on in the startups and new way to do things and so forth. You have to become really good at this, because every year in the United States alone, 650,000 businesses are started, and 2 or 3% of them, if they're lucky, are still around 3 or 4 or 5 years later. You want to be one of those 2 or 3%. It's not a part-time job. It is a devotion. It's a passion. And learning how to do it is part of it, Okay?
Yeah, I knew that you studying from your trainee. Thank you for your answer, and I will follow your Twitter.
Great. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Bob. Firstly, I would like to thank you about this lecture. It was really nice to hear from you and to meet you face to face. And here's my question. So we're launching, we are projecting a startup. And the subject of the startup is gravity. So gravity around the world, in Russia, in St. Petersburg, in Moscow. Well, the thing is that these gravity things will be placed on some sort of Google map. And, well, I can't tell you more because this is a project. And the thing is that gravity is, well, some sort of demolished or, well, it's not liked by many people, you know? Like, all people say, like, you destroy our culture, it's not a good thing. And this is some sort of prejudice, you know? I would like to ask you, how can we, firstly, if you had this chance to change the prejudice, if you had this project? And the second question is, if you didn't have, perhaps you know how to change people's opinion. Thank you.
Well, it's a very interesting question. I suspect if I knew how to change people's core beliefs and behaviors, there would either be a giant cross or Jewish star behind me, or I would be sitting on my 250-foot yacht in an armchair made of piles of money. What you're talking about doing is changing core human behavior. That is extraordinarily difficult, and usually step one is insert $100 million here. You are, changing innate human behavior, particularly opinions like that, is extraordinarily difficult, and 100 times more difficult for a startup that doesn't happen to have $100 million to put in the coin slot. What I would encourage you to do is, I've seen a number of graffiti businesses. The most interesting one is called Graffiti City. I forget whether it's .com or .co. I would guess, well, it's one or the other. It's not going to be hard to figure it out. The owner is a very insightful guy from the advertising agency business, so he knows something about consumer behavior, and he knows other people in the graffiti software business. You ought to build a little community and talk with your community. That is a brutally hard job. I don't want to discourage you, but I would put it within 3 degrees of impossible, unless it's graffiti for charity. New York City, what's the guy's name? De Kooning? Lorenz, right? Where they were doing, positive messages to ghetto children in graffiti, gave it something of a positive spin. But if you put it on the wall next to my apartment building, I still hate you. So I think it's a very, very difficult challenge. And you need to start with the community of interest, which is the guys in the graffiti software business. Okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, and here's a book that will help you do a little bit of research on how to do that.
Hi, Bob. Thank you very much for your lecture, because it was very useful and I learned very interesting things for me. Thank you very much. And the question is about profit of your project, because nowadays there are projects without profits, but we know that they are expensive, such as Twitter, for example, and how to understand that your idea can be as great as Twitter. So you have an idea, but you don't see a business model with profit for this idea. Does it mean that you should refuse to develop this idea until you don't see monetization, or you can try to develop it and create kind of new Twitter, or what
Sure.
to do in this situation.
Okay. Actually, this is here we talked about learning from my students. One of my students in Startup Academy 1, when it was part of Skolkovo before it graduated to the new Launch Gurus program, he had an interesting idea for remote medical diagnostic software, you know, where you could put something on your arm and send it to the cloud and get told whether you're going to call an ambulance, have a beer, or take a nap, or whatever. And I said to him, how did you come to this idea? He said, well, I was working at a medical technology company. I was tired of it. I wanted to start my own business. I didn't know, and he was somewhere out in the provinces, way out, like a 9-hour flight to come to Startup Academy. And I knew I was getting a big bonus check at the end of the year. So for 3 or 4 months before that, I started drawing business model canvases about all my different ideas, about what a business might. This is a wonderful, please pay attention, this is a wonderful way to think about your idea and to make it better before you start. I drew 16, 18, 20 canvases. Then I took a box from this one and put it over here and saw what that business looked like. Then I took a box over there. Then I turned it upside down. Then I turned it inside out. And I got it down to 6 different canvases of 6 totally different businesses. Then I went to Moscow and I showed those 6 different canvases to 10 or 12 investors. And when an investor said, if you'll quit your job and be the founder of number 4, I will put in the money. So I went back to wherever it was, Siberia, someplace far away, quit my job, cashed my bonus check, moved to Moscow, and started on business number 4. It's a great way to torture your idea before you even launch, to think and challenge and show it to friends you trust, show it to smart people in the industry. Become the customer search. See if you can find it or things like it on the internet and see how you can make your idea different from what's already out there. There's no magic answer. It's your first bucket of perspiration figuring out how to build a great business. Okay? And to help you, I think we have one more book that will outline some of this process for you. Yes, sir.
Hello. As you so eloquent have described, the best way to start up a company is to have investors' capital. Thus, you don't.
I never said that. I hate investors' capital. I absolutely hate it. I say the best way to start a company is a few $1,000s, either your MasterCard limit or a loan, not an investment from a friend or a parent. Start it just a little bit and see if you get customer response. You will waste months talking to investors until you have revenue or traction. So I don't know what lecture you are attending, but that is dead wrong, my friend. Okay? Now, what's your question?
At what point you stop taking investment capital, and at what point you start reinvesting the company's money?
As soon as you possibly can, because every time you take investor capital, you are giving up equity. Venture investors are piranhas, right? The more of your equity they take, the better they do. So investment, and I spent 6 or 7 years investing money, and my money and a fund I put together. I hated it. Your job is to take stuff away from the entrepreneurs, either by looking them in the eye or writing paragraph 72B that does it behind their back. It's a horrible business. It's the adversary, not the friend of an entrepreneur. And if you are trying to get investors' money without revenue or customer traction, you are just wasting your time in any place in the world except Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, where they have so much success they can gamble like they're still in the casino because one Google wipes out 100 bad investments. So I would just, You want to take as little venture money as you can and delay it as long as you possibly can. And the sooner you can be investing operating cash flow in growing the business, the better your chances for a big success.
Don't you agree that having more capital once you hit the product, that you'd grow faster by having additional funds?
Often, yes, but it's really, you can't, there's no blanket answer to your question. Okay? And here, we're out of physical books, but here's a free ebook to help you in your journey. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Bob. My name is Alex, and I will be short. Excuse me, my English not so good.
Better than my Russian, I promise.
Thank you very much. Yeah. In any case, I want to say for you, thanks a lot, because I write down 8 pages. Just I thought that translation was a little bit later than you said, but in any case, a lot of ideas. Thank you very much. My project it's a saving of energy, water, electricity, and sewage, and a lot of other points. Of course, I will write down for you in your mail, and I am not ready to ask you, but I will prepare and ask by mail.
Okay.
My thanks for your lecture. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
I'm a co-founder of a startup called Loyalty Plan, and it's the most amazing thing in my life. And my question...
Sorry, what would you say, the most?
Amazing thing in my life. Okay. My question is...
I hope you have a girlfriend or a child that's even more amazing, either now or soon. Yes?
I hope to. My question is, why some projects decided to growing up just to be sold to Facebook or Google or other big players? Why were not choosing to standing alone and take over the world?
It's all about the founder's attitude and the investor's attitude. If you are in this room and you have an interesting idea for a business, there are lots of people designing businesses to sell them to Facebook or Google or Yahoo. I think Google bought 83 startups last year. I think Yahoo bought 36. So if you're 25 years old and you can work hard for 2 years and sell something for $5 or $10 or $15 million, what the heck, why not? It's not a terrible idea. So you never, it's different things for different folks. You can also build a business that is never going to be Googled, never going to go public, and you can have a wonderful, exciting, challenging, professional life. And you'll probably see your friends more, pet your dog more, go to more soccer games, drink more beer. Doing a scalable, high-growth startup is a 120% commitment, to the point where when you crawl into bed with your man or woman, they say, hey, who's that? And how come you got home before 2 o'clock in the morning on a weekday? Your dog barks at you when you come home. Who is this stranger in my house? That is not for everybody. I don't recommend it for everybody. You are signing away 5 years of your life, right? That's not for everybody. I hope it's for you. I hope it's for many of you. But if it's not, figure it out soon. And the worst thing you can do is say to yourself, I'm going to work half speed or 3/4 speed, and tell your investor you are building a moon lander, because the investor is assuming a certain return. Your life is going to be miserable if your objectives and your founding team's objectives aren't aligned, and if your objectives and your investors are not aligned. It's going to be horrible. So be honest with yourself. Be honest with your partners and your investors, or you will have a more miserable time than, otherwise.
It's motivating. Thank you.
Okay. A book for you, sir? Yes. There you go. Hi.
Hello, Bob.
Should we make these the last 3 questions so we don't serve these people dinner otherwise in the rule? Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for this little masterclass.
My pleasure. This is fun for me. It may be work for some of you, but this is just what I call fun.
I want to ask you a question, maybe a sort of stupid question, but I want to
Go
have
for
an
it.
answer. Bob, what do you think? Will be the change, shift in paradigm of entrepreneurship in the future? I'm asking this because of current growth of technology, education,
I got the question. I'm very worried about the future of entrepreneurship. There are too many entrepreneurs who are only halfway in the boat. And they are being entrepreneurs because they couldn't get that cubicle at Gazprom or, the bank or wherever. And I think it's bad for the profession, if you want to call this a profession. I think it makes it tough for the investors because they have to look at so much garbage to find some gold. And I think it is a real problem, and I hope that your economy and our economy start to improve so that the people who are being entrepreneurs, because they don't want to say they're unemployed, get those jobs in those cubicles and give us real entrepreneurs, you real entrepreneurs, more airtime with investors, with mentors, with technology co-developers, and get the hell out of the way. I think, we saw this in 1999 into early 2000, and the result was the biggest drop in the history of the NASDAQ market. Thousands of bankruptcies, hundreds and hundreds of big companies going out of business, billions of dollars went DTT, direct to the toilet. I think it's a very dangerous time. I think it also means that companies with A- or B+ ideas that are still pivoting, still learning, are struggling. It's what we call in the US, I guess it's the same here, the Series A crunch. You got some seed money, you got some angel money, you got it moving but not on fire yet. And that next chunk of money is almost impossible to find. I think it's a very, very real problem, which makes thinking about your startup this way, making it great before you start spending the money, twice as important as it was, 2 or 3 or 5 years ago. Okay.
Thank you very much.
And I got a book for you too. That's great. I got 3 more books. So.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, Bob.
Hi.
Hi. I'd like to thank you for this lecture. It's very interesting and very motivative. My question is very simple. It is your first time in St. Petersburg? Yes? Yes. You have never visited this?
No, I have not.
Okay.
It has been #1 on my wife's and my list. I get to Moscow 3 times a year. One of these times, hopefully this summer, when I don't have to bring my snow shovel and my mittens, we will come back and see St. Petersburg the way people should see and enjoy it. I hear it's a magnificent city.
So it's great because you said before, let's start sale. I'd like to introduce you my project. It's fotata.com. It's the easiest way to find and book a professional photographer all over the world. So next time when you will visit St. Petersburg, please use it to find the best professional here in St. Petersburg to make the best photo session here. And that's all what I want to say to you today.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. I will do that. Bye. Thank you. Okay.
Hello again, Bob.
Hi.
I want to use my chances to ask you one more question. It must be more interesting than first one, but however, what do you think? I want to know your opinion about. Do I need to excite my friends which want to be excited by entrepreneurship or to be in startup? I have very much friends that just want to have a job. They don't want to do something. They tell me that, okay, we will thinking about, but you must give us something like a Google, then we will follow you. And I need to stop this, and find another friends, or trying to excite them.
First of all, I think the worst thing you can do is have on your founding team somebody you sleep with or play with, because you change your behavior and you round the edges of your opinions to not hurt your friend or bedmate's feelings, or your college roommate, or your suite mate, or whatever. I think, and if your friends are asking those kinds of questions, I would encourage you to help them tighten their resume, introduce them to people you know at big companies that might want to hire them, but you are not doing them a favor by pulling them into your startup world, and you are doing yourself a great disservice by bringing into your initial startup team someone who is declared that they are a part-time player, that they are not in it as hard as you. In my last business, when we had 300 employees in the Stamford, the headquarters office where I lived, I didn't have to work on Saturdays anymore. I had enough running well. I was basically in the process of trying to cash out of the company. Every Saturday I would go in for an hour or two. I would bring my dog. I would do a little email, drink a little coffee, but I wasn't there to do the email or walk the dog. I was there to walk around and say hi to people so that they knew that the CEO saw them working on Saturday. And I'd make 1 or 2 laps around. We had about 40,000 feet of office space. I'd make 1 or 2 laps around, turn off the computer, grab the dog, hop in the car and go home. And actually one of the first entrepreneurial advertising agencies had a legendary slogan. If you don't come in on Saturday, don't bother coming back on Sunday. In other words, we work 7 days a week. If you aren't there on Saturday, you are no longer good enough to be a part of our company. That's what makes winning startups. Not, well, gee, my kid's got a soccer game and then I've got a dinner with my girlfriend, whatever,
Yeah, I understand.
It's just a relentless passion for greatness. If you're not in it for greatness, you're not in it. Yeah. Probably as good a place as any to thank you all and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the University ITMO, I very much like to thank Bob Dorf for coming here and spending time with us. And I'm very glad that he in particular does not in fact carry on with his 26 hours a day working life, because otherwise he'd be working on a startup at this point and not sharing his knowledge and wisdom with us. We're absolutely delighted to have received the knowledge and the wisdom of a highly successful serial entrepreneur, and we're delighted to have had him with us today. So let us thank him very much in the usual way. Thank you, Bob, for coming here.